Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, good evening, and afternoon, everyone. A wonderful day, all of you. Welcome to our Institution of Global Professional Free webinar. Thank you all for joining with us in this session. My lovely audience, I am your host for this session. I am Kamrul from Bangladesh. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to be associated with IGP as a global member. I feel honored to host this webinar. It's my delight to welcome you all to our Institution of Global Professions. First of all, I requested all of our participants to share this webinar on in his feed. As our mission is speed to education everywhere. For that, you have to share this webinar on your speed and different groups and so thank you all for joining us today in this session and it's my humble request to you all that you stay with us till end and don't forget to tag, share and mention your friends. So let's together and learn together. Before we have completed our 408 webinar successfully today, I will be presenting webinar number 409 and the topic is culture-based lesson exemplars. Today, we have a speaker from Philippines. Let's welcome our speaker to the screen. Hello, sir.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everyone. Um, Welcome to our program entitled Culture Based Lesson Exemplar. So, I welcome everyone from all of the parts of the world to please join us in our program for this afternoon. So, I will be having this lesson, Culture Based Lesson Exemplar, which will be focused on learning the foundations and basic skills in developing a culture-based lesson exemplar. So I is your speaker for this afternoon. I am Sabina F. Carino Jr. I am a MAPE teacher at Juan G. Macarag National High School, Binalanan, Pangasinan, Philippines. I am a graduate of Diploma in Cultural Education aside from my bachelor's degree, and I am also on my PhD degree. So I am currently teaching MAPE, which is Music Arts, Physical Education and Health, solo instruments, which is focused on one of the traditional ensemble of the Philippines, which is Rondalia. And I also teach research focused on the arts discipline. So I hope that I can impart you a lot of concepts, ideas, knowledge this afternoon regarding culture, cultural education, and of course, on crafting a culture based lesson exemplar. Before we're going to proceed with our program proper or our webinar proper, I am giving you a quote which is inspired by Jean-Jacques Rousseau's Tabula Rasa. So we are like empty cups, and in the days of our existence, we are filled with meaningful experiences. As time goes by, our cups may be full and might not be able to fill again or to be filled again. So this afternoon or this moment, we empty our cups for us to fill it once more with new experiences. So let's now proceed to our program proper. So here are the subtopics of our program. First one is culture and education. Second one is cultural education and the curriculum. The third one will be the resources of cultural education. And last but not the least is our culture-based lesson exemplars. And in this part, I am going to demonstrate and elaborate to you how to create or develop one. So I guess we are all ready to proceed to the different parts of our program, starting with culture and education. What we are going to deal with this part is the different definitions and the challenges in culture and education. So according to UNESCO, culture is defined as the whole complex of distinctive spiritual, material, intellectual, and emotional features that characterize a society or social group. So when we say whole complex, it is composed of different aspects, different things, different facets of a specific society, cultural, or community group. This could be spiritual, our beliefs, material, our cultural products, what we have in our community or our society, intellectual, what are our thoughts, what are our ideas and concepts of something, and also is our emotional features. What do we feel about something? Or are these cultures taboo in our society? So those are the things that what makes a culture. That is according to UNESCO. And it also includes not only the arts and letters, but also modes of life. How do we deal with everyday life? The fundamental rights of human being, and what are the value systems that we have, also with the traditions and beliefs that we believe in. So these are the parts of what we call culture. So this makes a person's culture, our modes of life, the different systems that we do, what do we follow, what do we um, believe in and practice. So, in a deeper understanding, we have here culture, which is elaborated in this model, what we call the iceberg model. So, this iceberg model is from Paul Hibert, and what is included here is that our culture is like an iceberg, and this iceberg is divided into three different parts. So these three different parts are what we call the tip, and then the middle part, and also the uh, deepest part, which is under the water. So we divided this from the surface and then the core. So in the surface, we have there the sensory and explicit part of our culture. When we say sensory, these are the different cultural products, patterns of behaviors, signs, and then rituals that we believe in. So these are the sensory parts. Sensory parts, when we say these are the parts of our culture which can be perceived by our senses, what we hear, what we see, what we feel, what we taste, and then what we can do. How about the explicit part? So when we say explicit part, this is our belief systems. This includes our belief systems. What do we believe in? Our thoughts, our knowledge, and also our religion, the value systems that we have. These are all part of our explicit. And deeper than our explicit is the core of our culture, which is the what we call implicit part of our culture. This includes worldview themes. This is very important to understand what are the worldview themes, because these worldview themes, these defines really who we are, what is our culture, and this includes the categories, how do we categorize our culture, the different logics on how we think, how we act, and epistemology. Here are the different challenges on culture and education. First one is the transfer of knowledge and skills. It is really important for our culture and for education to have an efficient and effective transfer of knowledge and skills. It is because if we don't have a good transfer or an efficient or effective transfer, there will be an alteration on the different knowledge, ideas, concepts, processes, and procedures of the culture that we are going to impart onto other people. Quality and truthfulness of information also tackles this one. It is because when we trans- transfer or impart um, fake beliefs or untrue beliefs or untrue information, then therefore the credibility of that culture will not be as believable as of the other cultures. It will be just perceived as taboo or not true or a poor type of culture. Then the level of acquisition of learners really relies on the curriculum, on the educational system, and also with us teachers. It is because, or partly, there is a part of the learner that relies on their acquisition level. But most of the part of level of acquisition is on the teacher. How effective will the teacher discuss, elaborate, and then impart things to the learners? This is really critical and this is really crucial. So if the or if the teacher has the ability and has the skills to really demonstrate, to really impart what should the learners learn or what should the learners acquire is very important. Then emphasizing the value of culture. In other countries, it is they really demonstrate the value of culture, or they really give emphasis to what is the real value of culture. So it is very good for a country or a society or a community that really gives value to a culture. So when we say that this culture is sacred, this culture should not be practiced, should not be performed without any deep or um, any serious reason or purpose, it shouldn't be. And they have to respect that because the value of that culture is really important. It defines the whole community. The conditions of culture and tradition that is dying is also one of the challenges of culture and education. That's why in the Philippines and in other countries, we have this program known as the cultural mapping. So in cultural mapping, different people, cultural researchers, teachers, mappers, authorities that are really knowledgeable in culture and education, they, or should I say we, help hand in hand in mapping, in documenting, in recording different cultures um, that are not yet documented or that are not yet known by most of the people living in the community. So that is what we do in order to document and in order to put these different cultural properties, assets, and heritage of a specific society or community to be on the list, to be put into the inventory of the different cultural properties and heritage. And also, the alignment of these culture and education topics on the curriculum is really important. How are we going to integrate and align these cultural properties into our curriculum? So the teacher is really the person who is really responsible and accountable for this. That is why the Institute of Global Professionals are releasing or producing these kinds of webinars for the teachers and other people to be helped with these kind of challenges that they face when it comes to their culture and education. So those are the different challenges on culture and education that we face, or most of the teachers and educators all around the world face nowadays. So moving on to the cultural education and the curriculum. So the topics that we're going to discuss here is all about contextualization, localization, and indigenization. So when we say contextualization, it is defined as employing concepts in a meaningful and relevant context. This helps learners to acquire new skills and knowledge easier and better with the use of contextualized concepts where the learners are more familiar with. Contextualization is really a great approach in teaching different topics or in teaching different concepts to learners nowadays, especially when the resources or references that we are using are really out of date or they are not yet updated to what our generation is right now. For example, I have seen different computer books or computer education books that says that different storages comes in the form of floppy disk or compact disk. Those are true, but when we say contextualization, does it fit to the relevant context that we are right now? Of course, it is not. Because in our generation, or in the world, or in the time or era that we're living right now, floppy disks, compact disks, or DVDs and CDs were kind of obsolete. They are not used as frequent or as religious as we are using the flash drives or Google drives or the cloud right now. So when we say storage right now, in this time or at this moment, we can't talk about floppy disk or compact disk. But the first thing that will come to our mind are flash drives or Google drives or cloud storages. So those are more relevant and more meaningful context rather than using those obsolete ones. So that is what we are teaching on what we are targeting when it comes to contextualization. We are creating more meaningful context. We are creating more relevant context so that the learners can grasp more of the concepts that we are going to teach them or that we are teaching to them so that they can fully understand what we want them to impart. So that is contextualization. And contextualization has two subtypes. The first subtype of contextualization is the what we call localization. So when we say localization, it is giving freedom for schools and local authorities to adapt the curriculum to local conditions and relating the context of curriculum and the process of teaching and learning to the local environment. This is localization as a great debate in the Philippines, specifically on the basic education, on the elementary level or primary school level. It says there that why are we going to teach learners the ABCs in a very unrealistic context? Like A is for apple, while apple is not locally grown or is not endemic in our country. So that is a great point, or that is a great point for debate, excuse me, in the Philippines. And most of the educators and the teachers, we also think that, yeah, what if we are going to use local materials, local concepts that are more meaningful and more relevant to our context? And it's because learning is more effective when it is sensorial When we say sensorial, the learners can feel, can see, can smell, can taste what are we trying to impart to them. Although apples, there are apples in the Philippines, but these are not locally produced. But what if we use other things or materials or like fruits that could be more meaningful? Just like atis. When we say atis, these are sugar apples, which are endemic or locally grown in the Philippines, or aratilis. There are a lot of things that we can use in order to localize and for the learners to understand more about the topic or the concepts that we would like to impart to them or teach to them. Next one is indigenization. Indigenization refers to the process of enhancing curriculum, competencies, education resources, and teaching learning processes in relation to the biogeographical, historical, and socio-cultural context of learners or of the learners community. So when it comes to indigenization, we are focusing on three aspects of learning. Number one is biogeographical. When we say biogeographical, what is the description of the learner's community or the learner's geographical setting? Is he or she living in a rural area? Are there mountains or are there seas? What are the other landforms or how is he located in that specific area? Those are the different biogeographical aspects. How about historical? So is a historical significance of that place he lives in, or are there other places near the learner's community which has historical values, and also with the socio-cultural context of the learner's community. So this is what we are looking for when it comes to indigenization. We are going to align these aspects of the community into the learner's education or educational processes or learning processes. So that's what we call indigenization. So just to give you a recap, when it comes to the curriculum, we need to integrate or to utilize these three concepts. We have contextualization, where we create meaningful and relevant context into learning. Localization is using local materials and local resources to be integrated into the learner's learning. And then we have indigenization, which uses the three aspects of the learner's community, which is biogeographical, historical, and social cultural context of the learner's community. So how are we going to teach cultural education? We teach them because of these different resources. And where are we going to see these different resources? Our resources are divided into two types. First one is our primary resources or sources. This provides direct or first-hand evidence about an event, object, or person, original materials on which other research is based, and this helps us get as close as possible to what actually happened during a particular event or time. So these primary sources, these are what we call interviews or the original documents. So these primary resources are the what we call first-hand resources or first-hand evidences that we are going to use as our resources. So these are one of the most credible and most reliable resources that we could have. But primary resources or sources can be supported by the what we call secondary sources. These secondary sources describe, discuss, interpret, comment upon, analyze, evaluate, summarize, and process primary resources. So what do they do? One or more steps removed from the event or time period and are written or produced after the fact with the benefit of hindsight, lack the freshness and immediacy of original material. So when we say secondary sources, these are written or produced in another perspective. Okay? So for example, when we say autobiography, autobiography is a story of a life of a person which is written by that same person. So that is a primary source. How about secondary source? We are going to call it as biography. Why? This is a story of a person's life written by another person on his perspective. So that is the difference between secondary sources and primary sources. Okay? So collect, organize, and repackage primary sources. So those are the different types of sources that we need in cultural education. So in the Philippines, these are the different sources that are really reliable and credible when it comes to cultural education. We have the different government offices in the Philippines. And I know in the different regions or nations that you are in, there are also counterparts of these different agencies. So for the government offices, we have the NCCA, or also known as the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, NHCP, or the National Historical Commission of the Philippines. We also have here the National Archive of the Philippines, and then the National Museum of the Philippines, or NAP and NMP, respectively. We also have the libraries, especially our National Library or the National Library of the Philippines, and other repositories of documents about culture. We also have here Sagisag Kultura ng Pilipinas. This is a book. This is a compilation of the different cultural icons, cultural properties, cultural heritages that the Philippines have. And all of these were based on cultural mapping. We also have the different list of cultural heritage of the Philippines and, of course, cultural mapping data, which can be found on the different local government units, the library, of course, and NCCA, or the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. So these resources or these um, agencies that we confine resources are very important because they produce the most credible and the most reliable resources that we could use in order for us to integrate and to use culture in our lesson exemplars or in developing our lesson exemplars. Now that we have discussed what is all about culture, we have already built our background about culture, about curriculum, what does culture do to our curriculum, to our lesson, what are the things that we should do, just like contextualization, localization, indigenization, and where are we going to find resources. Those things have been already discussed. Now we are ready to proceed to the development of culture-based lesson exemplars. And on this part, we are going to discuss how to develop the ways and the different structures of a culture-based lesson exemplar. So what is a culture-based lesson? Culture-based lesson involves teaching strategies that integrate every aspect of community culture and traditions in learning academic lessons. In the Philippines, as an archipelago, our country is divided into three island groups, which is Luzon, found in the northern part of the archipelago. We also have Visayas. Visayas is located in the middle part, actually middle eastern part of the Philippine islands rather, and then Mindanao is on the southern part of the archipelago. On those different island regions or island groups in the Philippines, those island groups have different cultures from one another. And on those island groups, on those specific island groups, these are divided into different regions, and each region has again another forms or another types or different cultures and languages. Well, in fact, the Philippines has around 187 ethno-linguistic groups, same through with the different languages. These are languages, not dialects. Okay? So when we say language, these are um, the way on how we communicate. So from what we call Filipino as our main language, as our lingua franca, there are still other different languages that are scattered in the whole Philippine Islands or group of Philippine Islands. So that is how diverse our country is. So when you transfer from a place to another, you're going to experience another culture or new culture. So it is really diverse and we are really different from one another. But of course, we have our um, national culture that binds us together. We have our main language, our lingua franca that binds us together. So that what makes Philippines as a unified country. Okay, so there are a lot of ways and principles in developing a culture-based lesson exemplar, varying on the country of origin, mandates of education ministries and departments, and even educational policies, theories, and philosophy that a teacher would like to teach to the students. So, we are now bound to discuss the different types of CBLE. So the types of culture-based lesson exemplars varies from what the teacher wants to use and is also based on the current mandates and guidelines of doing so. So I have mentioned a while back the different educational ministries, different educational departments. So these agencies, departments, or organizations that serves as authorities in the educational system, they give mandates or they give formats, they give guidelines on how we are going to construct our CBLE. And in the Philippines, we have different guidelines. There is a guideline from our Department of Education, and on the different cultural organizations and then conferences just like Malikhaing Guro, it is also different. So here are some guidelines or the types of CBLEs that we can use. First one, we have the detailed lesson exemplar or the detailed lesson plan. We have the semi-detailed lesson plan or exemplar. We also have brief lesson plan and exemplar, teaching logs, and then we have also learning plans. But what I am going to impart to you today is mostly on the semi-detailed lesson plan exemplar type or structure. So in these structures, we have different ways and techniques in structuring a culture-based lesson exemplar. So for this afternoon or for this moment, I am going to give you three structures of the CBLE. We have 4A's, the 7E's approach, and then we have also the 5-step plan. So these are the three common structures of culture-based lesson exemplars that we use here in the Philippines. Okay, to start with, we have here 4A's model. So the 4A's model is based on the theory of David Kolb, which is the experiential learning theory. David Kolb, in his experiential learning theory, aims to let the learners experience what are the concepts, what are the things and ideas that they have or they have to learn in that specific lesson. And in this 4A's model, this 4A's model is also acknowledged, or it also acknowledges the past schemes of the student and integrating it to a new one. So most likely, this format will bring out what has been in stored, and what is missing will be filled in eventually towards a deeper knowledge of the lesson. The parts of the 4A's model are the following: activity, analysis, abstraction, and application. Let's start with activity. So this will bring understanding to what the learners already know and clarity to what learners should learn further. At this early stage, the students should already have a retrospect of what they will be learning through the activity that will be presented. I have here an example of an activity. So the instruction there was: the teacher will introduce a simple discussion on the basic principles of fashion designing through an activity entitled Choose to Go. The teacher will also introduce the center of the cultural integration, which is the Abal Iloco. So the topic for this CBLE, or culture-based lesson exemplar, is more on fashion designing, and the integrated cultural icon or cultural property is the Abal Iloco. Abal Iloco one is a type of a fabric or textile that is produced in the Ilocos region of the Philippines, that is weaved by the natives there, called as Ilocanos. After the activity, we have also here analysis. So analysis is a more in-depth understanding of the lesson, and is another phase where the students will process and classify what is valid and not. The teacher on this part will ask further questions and will also lead as a facilitator rather than mere lecturing and sharing facts and ideas. So in this part, the students will know what are the different um, what are the differences of the different topics that they are going to analyze and going to um, process. So an example of analysis is this. The instruction says the students will have an analysis on the basic principles of fashion designing by integrating other concepts and more specific information about the topic. So students' analysis shall be based on the activity Choose to Go. So this Choose to Go is an activity wherein the students or the learners are going to choose what outfit or what type of clothing suits best with the given situation. For example, I have included there um, a coat and tie, and then on the other side is pajamas. Then the situation or the condition that they need to match is nighttime or bedtime. So in that case, they are going to select or to choose or to discriminate one, and they're going to choose what is the most applicable outfit or clothing that suits the situation, which is nighttime. And obviously the answer will be the pajamas. And in that moment, that will be the starting point wherein discussions will flow. Okay, so the teacher will let the learners identify the different steps on how Abel Ilocos was weaved or made. And then after the facilitation, the teacher will design the learners, or will deepen the learners, sorry, the learners thought through a reflection. There is a reflection on the analysis on how they have understand the lesson, how did they feel, or what are their thoughts and reactions about the discussion or the analysis part. And on the abstraction, the teacher on this part will now focus entirely on the lesson being presented and ask more lead questions to lead the students in reinforcing what they know and should know more. The student here starts to feel more the importance of the lesson to her and to see the necessity of it to his or her life. So when we say abstraction, this is now the part where the learners are going to generalize, to summarize, and also to internalize what they have learned in that lesson. An example is the teacher will guide the students on recalling the important topics regarding the discussion of the basic principles of fashion designing. The students shall complete the statement, I have learned all about. Okay, so now in this part, the learners are now asked by the teacher on what have they understood in that lesson. What are the things that they have learned? So in this part, sharing is very important. Reflection of the learners are very important. And of course, the teacher's goal is to facilitate and also to give praises, give feedbacks, and to manage the flow of the sharing or the reflection. After the abstraction, the last part of the 4A's model is the what we call application. The word itself describes the stage as bringing the students to a more practical way of using how are they going and to use what they have learned and thinking of new ways on how it can be improved further. An example is this. Excuse me. The students will share suitable and efficient applications of what they have learned in their day-to-day living. The students will also share their ideas on the viability of Abol Ilocos, one of the fabric or textiles, for the emerging Philippine fashion sense, and with its potential to be introduced internationally. The teacher will facilitate this activity to expound more the sharing of ideas. And we have here our guide question. How will you utilize the ideas and concepts that you have just learned in your daily living? Okay, so this now suggests the different ideas of learners in application to what they have learned. Just like on the discussions or on the analysis part, we're in nighttime. What outfit or what clothing best used in nighttime? So in that part or in that specific idea or topic, the learners are now gaining information that could be possibly integrated to their daily living, wherein the learners will have a thinking or will have a reflection that, oh, I really need to wear pajamas or to use more comfortable clothing while sleeping for me to promote a good sleep, for me to have a relaxed body while sleeping, unlike when you use coat or when you use other types of clothing other than pajamas. So it will not give you a comfortable sleep. So those are the things that the learners or the teacher can see or observe the application of the different things that they have learned or discussed or talked about during that um, specific teaching and learning process. So those are the different parts of the 4A's model. And here are the parts. Of course, we have the objectives, the subject matter, and the procedure. So in the procedure, that's the part where we are going to apply the 4A's model. Again, these are the activity, analysis, abstraction, and application. Then we also have evaluation and also assignment. So we are now done with the 4A's model. Next one is another model, which is known as the 7E's approach. 7E's approach, it is patterned on the theory of constructivism, which is attributed to John Piaget, wherein learners are expected to investigate on a manner, find information, and create ways on how they are going to utilize this specific concept that they have learned. Furthermore, the phases in the 7E are the following: elicit, engage, explore, explain, elaborate, evaluate, and extend. 7E learning cycle is a template for planning and getting the most out of the inquiry activities. Let's now discuss one by one the 7E's approach. So the purpose of the first phase elicit is to assess a student's knowledge of the content. So we are going to base this on the prior knowledge of the learners. After we assess the prior knowledge of the learners, we are now moving on to the next step, which is engage. In this phase, it is intended to motivate students and to capture their interest in the topic. It is where we are going to give activities that could boost the interest, that could boost the eagerness of the learners to learn more. After that, the third phase is the exploration, where they're going to explore, where the teacher will provide students with opportunities for experience and to construct their own understanding of the concepts. Furthermore, the exploration part will give opportunities for the students to know, know more, do more, and then to create more of what they can do and what they can understand. The purpose of the explain part or the explain phase is to allow opportunities for students to verbalize or on verbalizing the concept. The fifth phase is elaboration, where the learners or the students can apply the content to other situations. The sixth phase is evaluation phase. The purpose of this phase is to assess students' understanding of the content, and the last phase is to extend. This phase challenges the student on how they are going to apply or to extend what they have learned in that lesson. So to give you more understanding about the 7E's approach, I have attached here or I am going to present a sample of a lesson plan or a lesson exemplar that had utilized the 7E's approach. Okay, so this lesson exemplar, I made this lesson exemplar entitled Pagpagpagkal. Pagpagpagkal is a healing ritual in the Ilocos region. And the topic that I am going to discuss is the different complementary and alternative healthcare modalities. Okay, so on the elicit part, we are going to measure the prior knowledge of the learners. So in this part, the teacher will initiate a game that will test the prior knowledge of learners entitled Name It to Win It. The teacher will show some picture clues where the students will analyze in order to arrive with the right answer. So for example, the first picture is nail. In, in the Filipino language, we call that as pako. And on the clue there, you have to remove P. So what is remained is ako. And then the next picture is a picture of different funk artists. So the answer there will be funked, or the word to be derived there is funked. And then we have here, third picture is the rapper named Future. And then we are going to remove FU. So we are going to, we derive the word TURE or ture. Then we're now going to sum it up, ako, funk, and then ture. So what word is formed, or what is the word that is formed based on that picture? So the answer will be acupuncture. So that is one way on how we are going to elicit, to process, to present the new lesson based on the prior knowledge of the learners. So I have here 5 items. So that will be items one, 2, 3. And on the next one will be items 4 and 5. And of course, 7 E's learning is mostly based on reflective learning. So in every activity, there should be and there will no chance for the learners not to have a reflection. Okay? So below that, guide questions after the game. Are you familiar with the words featured in this game? You're going to ask the learners about their familiarity. You are going to assess, of course, their prior knowledge on what are these different terms are. Do they have any idea? Are they familiar, or are they experience, or have they experienced one? Naturopathy, ventosa, acupuncture, reflexology, herbal medicine. So those are the things that they have to reflect on, and that is on the part of elicit. Now, we proceed to the next part, which is engage. The teacher will present, excuse me, a short video clip all about complementary and alternative healthcare modalities. Then afterwards, the learners will respond to the following question. Of course, there is again a guide question leading to a reflection. So, what was the video clip all about? What do you understand about the content of the video? What does complementary and alternative healthcare modalities means? And what are the types of complementary and alternative healthcare modalities discussed in the video? How does CAM help people improve their health conditions? And of course, what is your takeaway about the video clip? So in this part, you are now boosting the interest. You are now encouraging them to bring out their curiosity about the topic. So that is the part of engage. That is the engage phase of the 7 E's approach. After we bring out the interest and the motivation of the students within them, we now proceed to the phase of explore or exploration. So in this part, the teacher will divide the class into 3 groups. The students will have a brainstorming about the different CAMs available in the locality, especially traditional medicines and healing rituals. The students will present what they have brainstormed to the whole class. And after that, the learners will be given ample time to reflect or give insights on the activity. So in this part, this will now be a group collaboration. So every member of a group will have to share what do they know all about the CAMs that are available in their locality. Are there any complementary medicine that they have in their community? Are there any alternative healthcare modalities available in their community? If yes, what are those? What does it do? What are the different health benefits that it gives to the people who are availing this kind of healthcare modality? So the learners are going to discuss those, and in those um, discussions or brainstorming, they try to explore. They try to widen their horizons when it comes to CAMs or complementary alternative healthcare modalities. And then they're going to reflect on those different healthcare modalities that they have shared and they have explored during that moment. So that is the explore phase. How about on the explain phase? So on explain phase, the teacher will impart the concepts and ideas regarding complementary and alternative medicine to the learners. Now, this is now the part where the teacher is going to give discussions on what is or what are the different complementary and alternative healthcare modalities. In this part, he or she is going to give discussions, what are the different healthcare modalities, and then also the guide questions. These guide questions will now promote reflection on what they have learned. So, what are the processes in the healing ritual pagpagpakal? Now, they are going to try to identify what are the processes that had been elaborated by the teacher. They are now going to try to explain what they have understood on the teaching process of the different processes of the healing ritual pagpagpakal. What CAM or complementary and alternative healthcare modality are included or involved in the process. And then how do you find the effectivity or efficiency of the healing ritual? So just to give you a short background of what is pagpagpakal. So pagpagpakal is a healing ritual that is commonly practiced and performed here in the Ilocos region of the Philippines. So it has a lot of procedures and factors, and there are types of different CAMs or complementary and alternative healthcare modalities that are used. Number one is herbal medicine. In herbal medicine, they are using different herbs, different medicinal plants in this healing ritual, like moringa leaves, guava leaves, sugar apples. Those are examples of the different medicinal plants that they use in this healing ritual or practice. They also use some type of reflexology because they use some tapping motions in order for the affected individual to be relieved of that specific illness. So those are some brief information all about what is pagpagpagkal. So in those discussions, the learner will be given the freedom on how they are going to explain these things. So on elaborate, the learners will share their ideas regarding the healing ritual as a form of complementary and alternative medicine in similar or relative situations or events. They will be responding to the guide questions in order to elaborate their ideas. Here are the guide questions. What have you observed with the procedure of the healing rituals as a CAM? Are there any CAM similar or connected to this that you know or have experienced? What makes the healing ritual and form of CAM? And then explain. And then will you ever try this if ever you have the opportunity to be healed in this form of CAM? Why or why not? On this part, of course, reflection again is the key for them to learn. They're going to reflect and also they're going to elaborate other ideas that they know or other ideas that they have learned when it comes to their topic, which is complementary and alternative healthcare modalities. And of course, evaluate. They are going to undergo different assessment measures. For example, this is a true or false. They're going to respond or write T if the statement is correct, and then write F if otherwise. Then another evaluation is sequencing. They're going to elaborate the different steps of the healing ritual pagpagpagkal using the diagram below. And last but not the least is extend. How they are going now to extend this idea or concept or lesson that they have learned. The teacher will give a research task to the learners about the other CAM that they know and is popular or currently practiced in the community. The teacher will be giving research templates and interview forms to make the extension of learning uniform to all learners. They will be guided with these following guide questions. Are there any CAM in the community aside from the healing ritual of pagpagpakal? Elaborate your answer. What are the processes of these other CAMs available or currently practiced in your community? And then, is it helpful and beneficial to the target community or community people? Why or why not? So these guide questions will be very helpful or scaffold the learners in conducting their interviews to the community people. It could be to their parents, brothers or sisters, grandparents, relatives, uncles, aunties, or to the other community people who have knowledge about these other CAMs. So in that part, they are going to extend, they are going to apply what they have learned and to gather more information all about the different CAMs in their community. And that's it. Those are the parts of the 7 E's approach. We have the objectives, subject matter, of course, the procedure, evaluation, assessment, or assignment. And we now have the 5 step plan. So the 5 step plan is the most common and widely used format of lesson planning, which is basically based on the structure of a well sequenced teaching. Here are the different steps in the 5 step plan: motivation or review, presentation of the new lesson, lesson proper, activity, and then the generalization. So in this CBLE, I have used or integrated Aloragat River as a cultural icon or cultural property or natural heritage that can be integrated in this lesson. In the motivation part, this is the part where the teacher will engage learners to boost their interest and eagerness to learn by presenting activities, games or video, presentations, or any other form of learning experience. For example, the teacher will conduct an activity that will stimulate the creative minds of the learners, and this activity is called One Pick 5 Words. In this picture, they are going to give 5 words that they can derive based on that picture. So in that way, the learners uh, will be given a chance to think, to derive answers based on that pictures. Next will be the review of the previous lesson, or in the same level. Motivation is given if you're going to introduce a new lesson, while a review of the previous lesson is, of course, reviewing the previous lesson and presenting the continuing topic or concept to be discussed. So this part of the 5 step plan is implemented when the new lesson to be presented is relative to the previous lesson, where reviewing and recapping are the most important concepts and details is very significant in creating meaningful learning experiences. Next part is the presentation of the new lesson. In this part of the lesson plan, the teacher will reveal the new lesson in a way that it will raise curiosity among the learners and may result to the formulation of hunches and guesses about the new lesson to be taught. Creativity is a critical element in this part of the lesson plan. For example, I have used here video lessons and presentations. So the teacher will discuss active recreation. He or she will enumerate and explain the types of outdoor activities. Then we now proceed to the lesson proper. Discussion and explanation are the main part or main learning processes involved in this part. However, a teacher may include other processes like elaboration of ideas and skills, manipulation and demonstration if needed in order to target the objectives of the lesson. So after that, the presentation, the learners will now explain what could what could be the importance of recreation, especially in our lifestyle and health. So that will now be more on discussion, exchange of ideas, sharing of ideas between the teachers and the learner. So that is possible in this part, the lesson proper. And on the activity, these tests or activities test the acquired knowledge and skills of learnings of the learners. These activities to be presented must be in an active, participative, and collaborative manner where learners have to deal with their classmates in accomplishing such tasks. These also boost their social and emotional capacities, same through with their leadership and ability to take responsibilities. In this part, so the teacher will show the learners a video clip regarding community fitness. Through active recreation, the learners will be guided by the following questions as they go further on watching the video. So there is also again a part where they are going to reflect, where they are going to respond to different questions and to test or to assess their understanding about the video. Okay, we now proceed to generalization. And in this part, when we say generalization, the learners will be given a chance to summarize, to internalize what they have learned and acquired during the class. Generalization is not limited to asking questions about what they have learned. These can be also in the form of artistic expressions and presentations like songs, poems, visual arts, dance, skits, or role plays, and many more. So these are not just based on verbal presentation of what they have learned. So it is really important to assess also the different artistic expressions of your students. You may not know there is a singer in your class, there is a composer in your class, there is an artist in your class, there is a dancer in your class. So they can utilize their talents or their special skills in giving summaries or in giving generalizations of what they have learned. So in this part, the learners will justify the importance of active recreation by citing and relating it to real life situations. And then the learners will recap the concepts learned through a brief summary. And here are the parts of the five-step plan. Again, objective, subject matter, and then the procedure, motivation or review, presentation of the new lesson, lesson proper, activity, generalization, of course, evaluation, and then assignment. Before we end this discussion or this webinar, I give you another quote. We must see yesterday as our stepping stone for improvement. We must treat today as if it was a rain in the middle of a desert. And we must know that future means forward. And the only way to move forward is to progress. Be innovative, be future ready. Again, I am Sabino F. Carino Jr., a teacher 3 of 1G Macarag National High School, Binalanan, Pangasinan, Philippines. Saying thanks, thank you for your participation. It is greatly appreciated. If you have questions, you can find me at Sab Carino. That is my FB account. And you can send me an email via sabino.carino@deped.gov.ph. Thank you for listening, and that would be all for my speak this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your valuable information you share with our participants. I hope our participants also very useful from your presentation. Thank you, sir. Sir, we come back to our question and answer session again. Dear participants, let's proceed to our quiz competition. Today, our quiz competition code is only IGP. The quiz competition code only IGP. For joining our quiz competition, you have to go to slido.com, www.slido.com, and the code is IZ, and also the link given in our comments. And participants already joined with us. We'll start our quiz competition immediately. You will pick your name from our quiz, so join with your full name. Quiz will directly print on your certificate. Top 10 participants will be awarded our quiz competition certificate. To joining our quiz, you have to go to www.slido.com, and the quiz code is IZ. Kingdom this menu is Dear participants, we start our quiz competition in a short time, so join. Hi. Let's start the quiz. Our first question is: Henry Thoreau is an American poet. Is it true or false? Henry Thoreau is an American poet. Is it true or false? 20% of our participants give the right answer, and the answer is false. On the leaderboard, Cristiano leading the first position. Our next question is: Robert Frost is an American poet. Is it true or false? Robert Frost is an American poet. And 6% of our participants give the right answer, and the answer is true. Again, Cristiano leading the first position. Our next question is: It says beauty is true beauty. That is all you know on earth and all you need to know. Is it true or false? 78% of our participants give the right answer, and the answer is true. On the leaderboard, Cristiano leading the Carmela leading the third position. Our next question. So the line of heart of the bleeding drops of red blood was the death of, is it yes or no? 96% of our participants give the right answer, and the answer is yes. Now, Lamberto Espilitan Jr. leading the first position. Congratulations. Our next question is Freedom by Tagore is about motherland. Is it true or false? 96% of our participants give the right answer, and the answer is true. On the leaderboard now, Cristiano leading the our next question. In Tagore's freedom forbids refers to Indian people. Is it true or false? 68% of our participants give the right answer, and the answer is true. On the leaderboard, Cristiano also leading the first position. Our next question is Ode to Nightingale by Shelley. Is it true or false? 4% people give the right answer, and the answer is false. W.B. Yeats is an Irish poet. Is it true or false? 85% of our participants give the right answer, and the answer is true. Our second last question is the objective of poetry is to improve the language of the reader. Is it true or false? 69% of our participants give the right answer, and the answer is yes. Our last question is Robert Frost won Pulitzer Prize for 4 times. Is it true or false? 93% of our participants give the right answer, and the answer is true. Congratulations about top 10 participants. Joel leading the first position, Elizabeth leading the second position, Lazel leading the third position. Thank you very much for participating our quiz competition. Dear participants, now we are proceed to our most awaited session, and that is question and answer session. After this short video clips, we'll come back together with our speaker in our question and answer session. Welcome back, sir.
Hello.
Sir, are you ready to answer the question?
Okay.
Dear participants, it's our question and answer session time. You can send your question in our comment box and make sure to send it one by one so that our speaker understand it well. So participants are requested to send their question in our comment box. So we are waiting for our first question. Participants are requested to ask their question in our comment box. Our honorable speaker is ready to answer the question. Sir, our first question. Good afternoon, sir. How can we integrate culture in our lesson if we know that some of our learners are not in favor of our culture?
Okay. So how can we integrate culture in our lesson if we know that some of our learners are not familiar in favor of our or is not in favor of our culture? Okay, so when integrating culture into one's lesson, we do not have to impose what do we like to integrate in our lesson because we are after fairness, especially to the students, to what are their different backgrounds or what are their different cultures. We have to respect that. So what the teacher would do is to balance it out. If you are going to present a certain or a specific topic, you really need to balance it out. For example, if you are teaching in a very diverse culture of learners, wherein you are dealing with their different religious beliefs, there are different religious beliefs inside your classrooms, there are different cultures that are in your classroom which have different clashing ideas, clashing concepts. What the teacher could do is to balance it out. You try to integrate a part of a culture of a specific religious belief and also a part of a culture of another specific religious belief. Then you try to differentiate, you try to see if there is a comparison, if there is a contrast, in order for those students have um, to have an understanding about those different cultures. And I am quite skeptical about the term favor of our culture. When we say not favor, they do not like or they have something against about that culture. And I think really respect is a key also in balancing this out. If the learners want to be respected with their culture, with what they believe, they really also need to respect the culture of the other people inside the classroom or in that specific community. Please comment if I have answered your question properly, or you need more, or you need me more to explain or expound something about it. Okay, there is another question. There are many cultures in this world. How can we learn other culture without visiting other places? One way of learning other cultures is through the internet. Of course, internet is one of the easiest and fastest way on how we are going to derive information, on how we are going to derive different ideas and concepts that we want to learn, we want to know, and we want to explore. For example, in Google, once you have typed or encoded what concepts or topics you want to, there is a website, a platform that will lead you to the topic or to the specific concept that you want to. And I believe that in each country or each nation, they have their culture agency. For example, in the Philippines, we have the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. You can visit it, or you can visit those types of websites of different agencies of different countries so that you can learn different cultures. And also in YouTube, there are different video clips or movies or films that will show cultures of different countries. And one way, again, also to learn culture is to learn what are those different languages. And one way to learn is to, watch their indie films or their films that is played or aired in their different in those different countries. For example, I learned some of Korea's culture by watching Korean novellas, K dramas. So that would be a good example on learning different cultures without visiting places. Again, if you are not contented with my answer, you can comment if you want me to expound it more. Thank you. Another question. Good afternoon, sir. How do we motivate teachers to make CBLE if we consider the length of time? How do we motivate teachers? Me, myself, I really had a hard time in motivating myself. I've been crafting a certain CBLE for me to present it to Malikhaing Guro, and it took me almost a year to finish it. But then It's up to the teacher, really to the teacher, on how he or she will be a craft or will craft rather, on how he or she will craft his or her own CBLE. Now about the length, the the length of a CBLE or a culture-based lesson exemplar will depend upon uh, the broadness or the specificity of a certain topic. If the topic is kind of short, it could be taught 1 to 2 days only. But if the topic is kind of broad and there are a lot of things, a lot of details to be discussed, it could be from 3 to 4 or 5 days, or at a maximum of 1 week, one school week that is equivalent to 5 days. I guess I have sent an example of my CBLEs, and if you will going to observe on the 5 step plan, that is a 3 day lesson plan or lesson exemplar. So I have used 3 days for that. And on the others, 1 day and 1 day or 2 days. Do you have any sample copy of a lesson plan that integrates indigenous group? Um, at this moment, and to tell you honestly, I am not yet very versed with different indigenous groups because I am living in an urban area and indigenous groups are not quite that familiar to me. And I am not well versed with the different indigenous groups in the Philippines or in other places. But I am looking forward also to learning those. But when it comes to integrating different indigenous groups, what you really need to consider in integrating indigenous groups is that you really need to research well on what are these different indigenous groups, what are they called, where are they located, what are the things that differentiates them, or what are the things that separates them from the other indigenous groups, what are the things that matters to them, and what is the relationship of these ideas and concepts to your lesson. So I am sorry to say that I don't have yet a copy or a sample of a lesson plan integrating indigenous group. But as what I have said, you can create one, and the things that I have said a while back on the details can be used, can be of good use in creating this type of CBLE or culture-based lesson exemplar. But I have sent a copy of the 4A's model, the 7E's approach, and also with the 5 step plan. And I think they're going to post it on the website of IGP. Next question. How can we motivate or encourage the non-IP teacher to learn the culture of the learner in order to contextualize their lesson? If so, can you share what strategy I can use for them? Me myself, I am not an IP teacher or indigenous people teacher or indigenous culture teacher, but I am trying my best to learn to integrate what is on the curriculum of our educational system and how am I going to create a meaningful and relevant context and experience for these types of learners. What I have learned during our scholarship program, which is the Graduate Diploma in Cultural Education, so we are taught there different strategies on how we are going to create a contextualized lesson for these um, IPs or indigenous people. So one strategy is to really learn to be versed with what is the culture of that specific indigenous group or indigenous community. It is because they really value their culture. They really want to preserve their culture, and anything that is wrong when it comes to you relaying their culture to other people, you are going to create a taboo. So that is one thing that we really need to be careful of or be mindful of. Then another is to immerse yourself to that specific um, indigenous group or indigenous culture, because we all know learning by doing is one of the best way on how we are going to learn more or acquire the knowledge and the skills more. And can CBLE be applied in teaching physics? If so, may I ask for some suggestion in doing it? Of course, CBLE can be applied in teaching any other subjects, not just only in MAPE. It could be also in English. It could be also in other languages, mathematics, um, science, physics, technology and livelihood education, and other subjects. Well, in fact, when we have our scholarship, which the GDCE again, one of the lesson exemplars that were presented to us is the use of the different laro ng lahi. When we say laro ng lahi, these are traditional games that we used to play here in the Philippines. And the subject that is integrated to this is physics. What are the different laws of motions? Okay, so that's how they have used laro ng lahi in integrating physics as the subject or the main topic of the lesson. Are there no more questions?
Thank you, sir, for your beautiful advice you given to our participants. Thank you very much for giving us your valuable time with us.
You're welcome. And thank you also, sir.
Thank you. Dear knowledge seeker, I would like to thank you all from my deep heart for attending today's session. I hope you learn something new and you implement it in your life. Today our program name is Service Lesson Exemplars and the code is IZ383987. Thank you all for attending today's session.